Do you really need a teacher to learn English or any language? Can you learn it on your own, just using textbooks and videos? This is a question that many of my viewers have asked me. The answer to that question is, well, it sort of depends on your goals. But in general, if your goal is to speak fluently and at a native level, then yes, you do need a teacher. But the reason you think you need a teacher may not be the real reason. Today, in part 11 of my video series, The Best Way to Learn English, I'm going to discuss the real reasons you need a teacher. Now, before we continue, if you are not subscribed to my channel, please click the subscribe button now, and then you'll get notification of all my future videos and you won't miss any. So do that now, and then we'll continue. Okay, so what are the real reasons you need a teacher? I think this video is important because a lot of students have an idea of what a lesson should be, and they look for a teacher who teaches that type of lesson. However, what their idea of what a lesson should be is not necessarily the best way for them to study English. A lot of lessons offered out there are actually inefficient and wasteful. Personally, when I teach, I try to do my best to waste as little time as I can, and especially money. Because when you're paying a teacher to teach you, every minute costs money. So, as much as possible, I tell my students what to do on their own, and in our lessons, I give them, I hope, what they can't get on their own. So, what are those things? The things that your teacher should be giving you is, like I said, the things that your teacher should be giving you is the stuff that you can't learn on your own. If you can learn it on your own, using books and videos and magazines, etc., then why should you pay someone your hard-earned money to learn it again? Or not to learn it again, perhaps, but to learn it with someone teaching it to you rather than learning it on your own. Now, for some students, I should say, for some students, it's not a bad idea because sometimes it's difficult to motivate ourselves to study alone. So for students who find it very difficult to, make a point of studying English on their own, maybe they do need a teacher. They need a schedule. They need somebody to tell them what to do. Even though they know what to do, it's just that they need someone to lead them and to motivate them and to get them to do it. So for those people, even though they could be doing a lot of it on their own, maybe they find it difficult to get the motivation to do so, and in that case, a teacher would help them a lot. But if you're the type of person who wants to save as much money as possible, and you want to be as efficient as possible, then this is the way I recommend you learn. Number one, what a teacher can help you with, and what a teacher is necessary for, is pronunciation. Okay? You can't learn pronunciation from videos or from books, especially from books, unless maybe you have what we call a very good ear, but not many people have a very good ear. If you are already multilingual, if you already know 3 or 4 languages, then maybe you probably have a good ear because you've learned all those sounds. And what I mean by that is if you've learned those sounds properly as a child, but if you're an adult, learning pronunciation can be very tricky. Your ear loses the ability to hear different sounds that are not in your own language. And so, in this case, you need a teacher to not only teach you how to make those sounds properly, but also when you try to make those sounds, you need someone who's going to tell you that's correct, that's not correct. If you're watching a video, the video might be able to explain how to make a sound. They might be able to give you tips or tricks that you can look at and then try to repeat. But the biggest problem here is even if the teacher is fantastic in the video, there's no one there to listen to you and to tell you, yes, that's correct, that's perfect. Or maybe you're almost perfect, but not quite. And there's no one there to say, okay, I can hear that your tongue is just a little bit too forward or a little bit too backwards or whatever. And you need someone to listen to you speak and to be able to evaluate your pronunciation. And then you need someone who knows what it is that you are doing and someone who can explain to you what you need to do in order to get it right. So pronunciation is something that you absolutely have to have a teacher for. Now, of course, if you have an accent and other people can understand you, then maybe that's good enough. Having an accent, there's nothing wrong with that. And for many people, that's good enough. In fact, for some people, you might even want to keep the accent because a lot of people love accents. They think it sounds charming or sexy. So if you have an accent, you don't necessarily want to get rid of it completely. However, pronunciation is not only about speaking, it's also about understanding and being able to understand native speakers. In English pronunciation, there are a lot of things that, for example, Japanese students have trouble with because their ears just don't hear the sounds. Those sounds are not in Japanese, they're only in English. So they have trouble being able to identify the difference between certain sounds. In a case like that, you need a teacher to help you not only speak with a better accent, but also understand the native accent better. Okay? So that's something you need a teacher for, pronunciation. The second thing is to correct your mistakes. Okay, now I have worked at schools where the philosophy of the school was don't correct a student's mistakes. Okay, so if you don't correct a student's mistakes, how do they ever get better? Oh, well, they'll get better over time. Well, yeah, maybe, but it's going to be a long, long time. And the reason for that is because often when we make mistakes, we don't even know that we're making a mistake. We don't realize it. When I started studying Japanese, there were many mistakes that I didn't know that I was making. And sometimes you pick up things and you repeat it, but you don't use that in the right context or in the right situation. And somebody needs to tell you, okay, that's correct, but it's not the right situation for it. In this situation, you would say something different. Or maybe, I don't know where you got that, but it's wrong. Nobody ever says that. So there's mainly three types of correction that I do a lot in my lessons. One is just a reminder. This is when I remind a student of something, it's typically something that they have studied and they have learned and they know is correct. They know is incorrect if they stop and think about it. But when you're speaking, there's not a lot of time to stop and think about every word and every grammar rule. So very often students will make mistakes even though they know the rule. If they think about it, they know the rule, they know that it's wrong. If it was in writing, they would be able to correct it. or maybe if they were just concentrating on that one sentence, they would be able to easily see the mistake and fix it. But when you're speaking, you're thinking about not only the grammar you're using, but what you want to say and the ideas and trying to organize everything together. So there's a lot going on when you're speaking. And so these mistakes, even though you know that they're wrong, if you stop to think about it, they just fall out. So that's something that's very common, and that is one thing that a teacher can help you with. When they remind you a few times, then it becomes a habit to say something the correct way. As a typical example, tomorrow I go on a trip. Now this can be said, actually, a native speaker might say this in a certain situation, but most of the time, in most situations, this would be wrong. And I would correct the students and say, oh, tomorrow you're going on a trip, right? So the student would say, yes, right, tomorrow I'm going on a trip. And that would be the correct way. So here they know that it's wrong. I'm just reminding them that they said it the wrong way. The second type of mistake is where I actually teach something. Maybe they don't know it's wrong, and they need somebody to point it out to them. And they need somebody to show them, oh, what you're saying is actually incorrect here. This is the correct way to say it. So for example, if the student says, she called me in Tuesday. Maybe they don't know that when we're using days of the week, we would say on Tuesday. And in would be used for a year example or a month, right? So I went to Canada in 2006. So that would be a year, or in July, whatever. I met her in July. Okay. So in is used with months and years. Weekdays are used with on, and time is used with at, right? So I will meet him at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, or on Tuesday next week, or whatever. Okay, so this is a case where maybe the student never learned that it's in, at, and on, and that they depend on the time that you're talking about, whether it's time or month or year or day of week. And then the third type is when the student actually says something correctly, grammatically correctly, but it's not a natural way of speaking. Okay, so here, for example, the student says, what will you do tomorrow? Everybody, excuse me, everybody learns that the future tense, you use will. They also learn going to, like to be going to. So the student might ask me, what will you do tomorrow? Or the student might ask, what are you going to do tomorrow? But the truth is, in most circumstances, most of the time, when you're simply asking your friend about their plans tomorrow, we don't usually use what will you do tomorrow, and we don't use what are you going to do tomorrow. The most common way of asking it is, what are you doing tomorrow? And this is something that, while this is not technically incorrect, it does sound unnatural. And it's not something that we would normally say. Now, there are cases, yes, where we would, but in this case, when you're simply inquiring about your friend's plans, the circumstances are not special here, we would normally say, what are you doing tomorrow? Or we might ask, do you have any plans for tomorrow, or whatever. But this is a case where the teacher can help the student speak more naturally, even though it is technically correct. There are other cases. Another case, I didn't write it here, but is the use of the word angry. Japanese students often use the word angry. The Japanese word for angry is, or to get angry or to be angry is okoru. And so they look in the dictionary and they go okoru, and then they go angry. Okay, so then they remember the word angry and they use angry all the time. But in North American English, anyway, I can't speak for British and Australian and every other English country, but the way I use angry is not really that often. We use angry when it's quite serious, actually. And so instead of saying angry, I might say something like, "Oh, I'm late for dinner. My mother is going to be mad." So we would normally use the word mad in this case instead of angry. Now, mad can also mean crazy. So it depends. Again, in North American English, we use mad often. In other places, they might use angry more often. I don't know. But I teach North American English. And so when you're studying North American English, using angry all the time doesn't really sound very natural. It's best to reserve the word angry for when it's a very serious and the person's emotions are incredibly intense. Whereas mad could just be, "Oh, why aren't you here? Why weren't you here at 6 o'clock? We had to wait and now dinner's cold." That's not really angry. That's just mad. So mad is kind of like a light form of angry. And we normally use the word mad most of the time, unless we are trying to emphasize that the emotion is very intense. So then it's more than mad, it's angry. That's a general definition. Anyway, so here, what I'd like to stress the most is this is what your teacher should be concentrating on as much as possible if you want to save yourself some money and if you want to learn efficiently. What about grammar, vocabulary, and doing drills? Well, do I teach grammar and vocabulary and drills in class? Sure, of course I do. But I don't focus on it. I don't make it a point to spend a lot of time teaching new vocabulary. Why? Because you, as a student, should be, remember, I talked about this in other videos, you should be getting so much input elsewhere. Magazines, TV, books, internet, blogs, YouTube, everywhere. You should be getting so much input. You should be doing, an hour or two a day, or however many hours a week makes you happy. But you should be getting so much input, and you should be using your dictionary to learn these new words, that the teacher should not have to spend a lot of time teaching new vocabulary. Now, of course, during the lesson, in a conversation, new vocabulary will come up just naturally. And in a case like that, I'll introduce a new word to the student so that they know a better way of saying something or whatever. But I never take 20 minutes to introduce new vocabulary. That's not something I do, because they should be learning a lot of their own vocabulary, a lot of vocabulary on their own, while getting all that input. Grammar is the same. As a student, you should have already, if you're watching this video, you already know a lot of grammar. You've learned that from your textbooks when you started learning. And of course, there's more advanced grammar, and I do teach that sometimes when it's necessary. If the student doesn't know the difference between, for example, if I, whatever, how about this? If, I'm not coming up with an example. Okay, but anyway, I'm talking about like if plus the present tense plus will versus will, if plus the past tense plus would. So for example, if it's dirty, clean it. Or, if it's dirty, I will clean it. Versus, if it was dirty, I would clean it. Those are two different things, and depending on your native language, it can be confusing to know which one to use. In Japanese, also, there's they have this grammatical construction, tara, which is like nani shitara. Anyway, the point is that sometimes it means if and sometimes it means when. So that can be a little bit tricky. In English, if it's broken or if it rains, I'll stay home. When it rains, I stay home. That can be confusing to some Japanese students because in Japanese they often use the same word for both situations, and it's context that tells you which meaning to take from that. So there are a lot of cases like this, and sure, I teach grammar, but I don't say, okay, now today we're going to learn some new grammar. What I do is I listen to the student, and when they have trouble with one particular, they've already learned all kinds of grammar. I'm not going to go over everything they've already learned. Some of it they know well, some of it they don't know so well, and as we're talking, I can listen to how they say things, and I can pick up, okay, they're having trouble with this one because this is the third time that they've made a mistake with it. Let's take a moment, let's do a little lesson on the difference between this, and then I teach it. Sure, I teach grammar, I teach vocabulary as it comes up. I do not take half an hour to say, okay, let's learn some new vocabulary or let's learn some new grammar, because it will come up naturally, and at that point I can focus on what they need, not what they don't need. So that's an efficient way of learning English. And then drills. Drills, I'll take a few minutes, I'll say, okay, this is a new grammar, just repeat after me, or maybe I'll use the same grammar and make different questions, and just to get them to repeat the same grammatical structure or pattern a few times. But then after that, I expect my student to go and do that on their own. If I teach something simple like I like whatever, I don't like whatever, I might say, okay, do you like chocolate? Yes, I like chocolate. Do you like strawberries? Yes, I like strawberries. Do you like bananas? No, I don't like bananas. Do you like celery? No, I don't like celery. Okay, great. That's enough. Now, after our lesson, you go. You think of 50 things that you like or you don't like, and just say it out loud on your own. You don't need me for this. So I'm not going to waste your time. Instead, let's get back to having a conversation where I can focus on your pronunciation and correcting your mistakes as you're speaking naturally to me. So anyway, this is my view of the best way to learn English and the most efficient way to do your lessons with your teacher. Not everyone will agree. In fact, I have some students that really, they don't get it. They don't like the way I teach. What they want is a teacher who does drills and vocabulary and grammar, and that's what they want because that's what they expect. For them, that's a good lesson. Unfortunately, they are wasting their time and they're wasting their money because they should be doing this on their own. But if that's what makes them happy, then that's what they should do. So it's something to think about. Think about what your goals are. Think about, do you have enough money that you can waste on lessons where you do things that you could be doing alone? If you do, if you're rich, you want to spend that kind of money, great, go for it. If you don't, most people don't have a lot of money to waste. I know I don't. If you don't have a lot of money to waste on doing things that just repeat what you've already done or that do things that you could be doing on your own, then try to follow this advice. You do need a teacher for this. You can't do this alone. You need the feedback. So you're going to need a teacher if you want to take your English to the next level. But you can get far without a teacher. You can get far without a teacher, and at that point, you can hire somebody to teach you and save yourself some money if you have somebody who is teaching efficiently. Hopefully, this video has helped you understand a few things about learning English efficiently and a better way to learn English. I hope you liked it. If you did, please click the like button. Don't forget, if you haven't yet subscribed, click on the subscribe button so you get notification of my future videos. And thank you for watching. I will see you again soon. Bye.